Approximately 106 billion human beings have occupied the planet since the dawn of Homo sapiens. And archaeological evidence suggests that we've been ritually burying our dead for over 140,000 years. That's a lot of bodies in the ground. But not all of them are found in easily identifiable burial grounds. For example, municipal records show that beneath this elementary school in a quiet suburban neighborhood of a western Montana city lie the graves of Chinese immigrant workers whose cemetery was located here in the late 19th century. For thousands of years, Native Americans have been consecrating their dead and burying them across the North American continent. In the United States, there's federal legislation designed to protect the sanctity of those graves and the associated grave goods, whether they're discovered in the field or housed in collections in museums. In 1990, Congress enacted the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. It is commonly known as NAGPRA. Funerary rituals are a nearly universal experience of the human condition. They cut across cultures and religious practices, and whether they are familiar or perhaps a little more exotic, or even monumental, all of these ritual practices are meant to do one thing, and that is offer some respect for the deceased. Unfortunately, for Native Americans, this was not always the case. During the long 19th century, Native American graves were routinely desecrated, destroyed, plundered, and exploited for scientific research on a nearly systematic scale. NAGPRA, as a law, was designed to offer a modicum of restitution for Native Americans by helping them retrieve grave goods, human remains, to protect the graves that are still in the ground. So how does NAGPRA work, and who does it apply to? NAGPRA has two primary provisions. The first concerns rules governing the discovery of Native American graves. The second governs the return or repatriation of human remains and associated grave goods to their home tribes. The cultural objects governed by NAGPRA include human remains, funerary objects, sacred objects, which are usually objects used in rituals by religious leaders, and lastly, objects of what is called cultural patrimony, or objects that are integral to the identity of a particular tribe, but don't belong to any single person. Let's now consider some of the rules governing the discovery of Native American graves, starting with intended discovery. If you're an archaeologist planning a project on federal land or Indian reservation land that intends to discover a Native American grave, you'll first need the permission of the tribe that's affected by the dig. And you'll also need a plan of action that details how you'll be returning human remains or associated grave goods to the affected tribe. Of course, not all graves are discovered intentionally. Some get uncovered by accident. What happens then?
We're project managers.
And we're building a wastewater treatment plant on federal land.
How do we ensure that we're in compliance with NAGPRA?
If you're a project manager working on federal land or Indian reservation land, and you believe you may unintentionally discover a Native American grave, you're going to need to file a plan of action with the tribe and the Department of the Interior. The plan of action will detail how work stoppages are handled and also how the human remains or associated objects in the grave will be protected. But what happens if your project is not on federal land? Does NAGPRA still apply?
Beth, what should we dig in our garden today? A skull? Oh my goodness!
Do we need to worry about NAGPRA?
The provisions of NAGPRA only apply to Native American graves uncovered on federal land or on Indian reservation land. Any grave discovered in the course of a project on private land or state land, for example, will not be governed by NAGPRA. However, some states have even more far-reaching legislation that govern the discovery of these types of graves, even on private land. So, check with your local laws. Let's now turn to the provisions of NAGPRA that affect museums and other research institutions, specifically the issues surrounding repatriation.
I'm a museum director. How do I make sure I'm in compliance with NAGPRA?
Any museum, university, or research institution that is in possession of human remains associated with Native American graves or funerary objects must be in compliance with NAGPRA. To do so, institutions must prepare a public inventory of all such items in a collection, notify tribes and individuals with whom such objects are related, and honor any requests from tribes or individuals for items in the list. It is also the responsibility of the institution to identify the cultural affiliation for each object, though these objects may or may not be repatriated, depending on whether the tribe or the individual wants them back. There are also provisions for continuing research on certain objects, in consultation with the tribes. The Act also appropriates funds to assist museums in building their inventories and to help tribes retrieve objects. While the Department of the Interior, who oversees the enforcement of NAGPRA, does not have the authority to call in missile strikes, there are civil penalties and possible fines for institutions who fail to be in compliance with the law. NAGPRA also stiffens criminal penalties and fines for those caught trafficking in Native American human remains or associated grave goods. In our next episode, we'll learn from some NAGPRA case studies, including the mysterious and controversial Kennewick Man.